Hey everyone, Brendan Hall here with one of our esteemed favorite guests here, Coach Vass. Glad to have you back for another year. Glad to see you. Happy football, man.
Happy football. I'm glad to see you too, man. This is it's my favorite time of year, and I'm just happy that we're going to be able to provide an outlet for or a way for coaches to be able to get some help during the year. I know it's hectic this time of year, and you're just looking for pieces to help you win. You don't have necessarily a ton of time to sit down and watch some in-depth stuff. So we're gonna hit some nuggets here and there and hopefully help you prepare.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. As Vass said, we're entering a critical point of the football season here. For some of you, playoffs are rounding into form. For others, you're still trying to figure stuff out. Um, Nobody's looking to change things midstream, right? No one's looking for a whole new set of rules, a whole new program shift midstream. But there's plenty of little things that you can do along the way that can make a big difference, right? Especially with the limited time, right?
Absolutely. I still looked in season for things, even though we, like most coaches, I had my processes nailed down preseason. I'd probably wait till the day before to have it all locked in, but I would have it locked in. And I would come into a situation, especially with breaking down film, where I would get to a team and I wouldn't be happy with the process that I had. I'd always be looking to change things, or maybe you see an opponent that did something differently and you needed information that you didn't think you needed before. For example, when I was in Northern California, we saw a lot of run teams, and then we came across a team that threw the ball a ton and did a ton of different protections. So we wanted a different way to expand how we were doing it, not necessarily change the whole process, but at least that part of it, add something midstream. So there are some pieces that you can take with you, and hopefully we can give some insight and answer some questions that people had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to get into those questions. We're going to get into questions in a second. You guys, you coaches were kind enough to send us some questions over the last couple of weeks that we solicited, and we're gonna hammer them out here. But first things first, I remind you, if you haven't already opted into the Hudl beta, we really encourage you to do it now. And I guarantee you, once you're in, I'll never ask you again. This thing is slick. It's everything in this thing is designed to make you work quicker and more efficiently. And especially a time right now where time is of the essence, this can be a huge savior for you and help you keep that edge as you get deeper and deeper into your season. All you have to do, if you're not opted in, all you got to do is go on your navigation and hit beta, and we're good to go. And if you're not following our product manager Nate Patterson, the brains behind Hudl Beta, give him a follow on Twitter. We've got an announcement to make about, you're gonna love this one, Vass. Saving column sets in the beta is now.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
That. That's great, and the beta is great. You said a couple key things: time saver, free. Well, you didn't say free, implied, and
Yep.
already there. And not only will it save you time, it's easy to learn, it's intuitive, and I've made the switch for most of my stuff, and I encourage you to as well. And like you said, once you start using it, it's hard to go back.
So yeah, and like I said, our product manager Nate Patterson is building this thing in public. We encourage you to give him a follow on Twitter at Nathaniel_Pat and give him feedback as we go. We're going to keep adding to this thing, and we strongly encourage your feedback. So,
and they will listen to the feedback. I can't stress that enough. A lot of companies, they say, hey, if you got anything, let us know, and then it goes into a trash can. These guys do. In fact, I remember I did some test stuff early on, and we would go to the next meeting and Nate would be like, oh, this is, we added this. And I'm like, oh my God, it's something we talked about. So Nate's the best. I love Nate.
Nate, we love you, man. Hope you're having fun in Chicago there.
Nathaniel. I'm calling him that from now on, by the way.
Yeah, so let's get right into our first question here from our good friend Jason Kazar in Manhattan, Kansas. He wants to know about reports and which ones you tend to use every week, and how do you save them, you rebuild. We're going to show you guys a new way to do that. That's going to be much more efficiently in a second, but did want to address that. What are your thoughts here, Vass?
So my thoughts on creating reports. Now, I had a couple that I used. I will be, very honest with you. We saw a lot of teams where we saw a ton of different offenses where we needed different types of information. So we would kind of create the reports from scratch, but we did have a few that we did save and have at our fingertips if we needed to use them. So the first thing I want to say, and I'm going to share my screen here, Hudl, first of all, has custom reports, or rather stock reports that are in there that will be useful for you when you're doing some different breakdowns. Now, here's the thing I want to say. A couple things to note that my defensive brethren probably didn't know, and I didn't realize until many moons had passed. When you're tagging film, when you're tagging offensive strength, hash mark, play direction, if you're not doing Hudl assists and you're doing it from scratch, make sure you tag from the offensive perspective. Why do I say that? Because, and we'll get to this in a little bit about practice structure and drawing up practice scripts, but also the stock reports that Hudl has set for you. If you go into reports, you can see summary, field zone, hit charts, down distance, formation, what's next, etc. If you're breaking down the offense, it's doing it from an offensive perspective. So if you do everything backwards, it's going to give you the information backwards, and sometimes it doesn't compute. So make sure you tag from the offensive perspective. Also, you want to tag from the offensive perspective if you're using the practice scripts function, which should be, if you have Hudl, it is a lifesaver. And again, we'll touch that in a little bit, but it integrates with that. So I found out the hard way many moons ago that when you don't do that, it doesn't play nice, which of course, I mean, it's all built in. That's the whole thing, is it saves the formations. It makes your life easier. You're only having to draw things once or twice, but now you can set it and forget it. So the custom reports are here. Now to do the stock reports are here. To create a custom report and to save it, all you're going to do is you're going to go click whatever you want, hit reports, create a custom report. Okay. When you create that custom report, you put save this report as a template. So let's just do a simple, this is a game from 2016. And it's a very good team, St. Mary's of Stockton. So let's just say you want to do a personnel offensive formation, play type, an offensive play. You just want to do a simple, what are they doing? What formation are they doing out of what personnel and what plays? So you go here, you save this. Let's just say we're going to do play by formation by personnel. Okay. Whatever you want. And that's the great thing about the reports is and you can move it. So if you're like, oh, I want this. Now this is pretty straightforward. I'm just doing a simple demonstration, but if I have some that are like 8 columns deep and then you want to change some stuff, you can just drag up and down here. You go ahead and you hit create this report. Make sure you save the template and name it. So you go here and then you click this and here's the report you want. Okay. If you want to print or go full screen, here's your buttons. Now that's saved forever. So now let's click the next team. The Great De La Salle High School. Now all you have to do is you go into reports. You click that we just made, create reports. There you go. Now it looks confusing now because we all have everything in one folder, subfolder, whatever you want to call it. So it's going to be the same name. But remember, when you're doing this, it'll be under different headings. This will be in another game week or whatever you want to call it. So it does look confusing right now because they have the same names, but just keep in mind. And if you forget and somehow you're in this situation, you go up to the top there and it tells you up top here on the left, I'm pointing like you can see my finger. You can't follow my mouse. You can see when it was made, by whom, and what playlist you were working off of. So sometimes you'll run a report. Let's say you're on a bye week. You run a report on a team that you're going to play. You run the report. You have a bye. They don't. And now you want to create another report with the new game data. You can remember, instead of trying to remember which report's which, okay, you can see up here what the source is. You can select multiple games. And then here's the best part. You ready to save a lot of time? Now I only have that one. And just keep in mind, I have all this film, my old film from Sarah. The purpose of it is to have my defensive self film for myself to show other people. This is not for scouting offensive purposes. So not all the data's in. So I just want to be very clear on that. But now you want to go to reports, you can click multiple ones. The stock, the custom, you can mix it all up. You hit create reports. Boom, look how fast that is. Look at that. All that data, all that time just saved by field zone. Now, again, I don't have like the ball carrier number and the receiver number because there's some columns that are filled in. And if you're like, hey, Vass, what columns do I need to fill in? You're talking about Hudl has these stock reports, these stock columns. What does that mean? And you can't remember what it is. You go to team settings. And then I have a million different columns here, but you see the little Hudl logo? Those are built-in Hudl columns. That's a much nicer way of saying it, Brendan, than stock report.
Yeah.
Stock sounds bad, but it's actually fantastic. It's saving you a ton of time.
All right. So that's pretty fast. You want to go even faster?
In the words of Ricky Bobby, I want to go fast.
Let's show how it looks in the beta.
All right. So let's just say we did formation. What did we do? Personnel, formation, play. Let's do that even faster. So we're going to hit this same report. And now here's the cool thing about the beta. And I get there's value to having these reports. But if you want to go faster and you want to be, more importantly, more malleable, and now keep in mind, this is without that save column feature. Imagine what it's going to be when that comes in. Okay. I'm clicking here. You can do your layout. Do you want to do video and stats? Video, stats, and grid. The grid is your plays, your columns, or video only. I personally like to go video and stats. If I want to see the columns for some reason, I like to go to the other view, but that's personal preference. You can do everything that you want. So you drag and you click. So let's go personnel. So we're going to go ungroup stats. And here's the other thing. Hudl will kind of put everything in a one big bin and it'll say, what do you want? Instead of making decisions, you click through. And you can move stuff around. So I'm just going to do something real quick. So you can put things in different columns. So this gives you even more flexibility. Offensive tendencies. It's all grouped right here. And so you can drag and move things around and send things back. Send things forward, send things back. So if you see something down here, so one of my favorite columns to tag is offensive concept. You can send that. You can look here and then click the play. Or if you want it to go up with all the other stuff, you click here and you can move it to whatever column set you want. So offensive concept is an offensive tendency. So it goes up here. There it is. Okay. Now, if you want to recreate the report, sorry, I got a little off track, but if you want to recreate the report we just made, you can do so by clicking in and out of different windows. So you go to personnel. Instead of it all laid out in one big report, and you can still have that, you can still expand out. Okay, and you can even do it by down to, you can go deeper and click through that. But usually with those reports, it's cool to see it all at one time. You know, it's just kind of an overview. But if you're really looking through stuff, you can select here, and then that's the first column we're selecting. So then it shows you the run pass, the formations, then the plays, the concept. Or if you want to do offensive play, you can do that. But the great thing is when you're done, you can just X out of whatever you're looking at. So let's say we're watching 10. We want to watch all the pistol double twins. We want to watch all the zone folds. Bam, right there. Okay. And when you're done with that, you can either watch the stretches too or add that. Like, so that's the second column. And it automatically does it instead of alphabetized. It's by frequency. So it's intuitive. Okay. Say you want to get rid of the zone fold. You just hit X. Like the audio there. You got a little taste of the Sarah experience. But anyway, so now you have basically the report, but you're able to move stuff around. You're able to do different things instead of having this report that's just, it's a dead document. Once you run that report, and they're fantastic, but once you run that report, that's it. Now, if I want to do something else, I got to go create another report. And one of the downsides of any report of any software in the history of reporting for any sport is you got to keep going back and forth, right? So when I'd make those 40 clips, let's go back to the old way for a second. And this is any software at any level, okay? This is not a Hudl thing. When you're using a report, it's giving you the data and that's it. And what the cool part about the report that Hudl does that no other company does is it hyperlinks the plays. So let's go back to that. Let me share my screen again. Okay, let's go back to one of the reports I made. The cool part is you click here, the numbers, you pull up those plays. And then you go back to the report. Well, sometimes you can get lost. So now I'm down in the report. I click here. Most of the time, once you click that report, it takes you back to where you were just looking at, which is fantastic. But when you're dealing with a bunch of reports and you're like an insane person like me, and you have 45 reports, you click the wrong thing, then you're trying to figure out where you were. The other way, especially when you're going to be able to save those column sets, rather, it's much more, you're moving things as you're going through. You're not having to set these things in stone. Like this report is this report. You can't then customize after it's made. And I think that's really I said to somebody, it's like going to the science center. You can like get your hands involved and move stuff around. You're not just looking at something on the wall. You're able to move it around. And I've honestly thought of different ways to look at data with having that experience in the beta. So it's opened up different avenues because it's not just a straight logic report. Okay, I'm gonna look at this, then this, then this in this order. And the great thing about saving reports is you're saving time, especially if you're using the same things over and over again, but you also get locked into that way of thinking. And so sometimes when you're able to move stuff around more, unlocks how you view things. So very valuable.
Awesome. You mentioned about, and I think this is a good segue to our next question, just about your favorite custom columns to break down. And the question was posed here from Mike McDonald from Kettle Moraine High School in Wales, Wisconsin. Mike, thanks for the question here. I feel like you could give Leo Tolstoy a run for his money if you answered this in full. So let's try to time box this a little bit. But he asked, what categories do you tag in Hudl? What do you find most valuable?
I find everything valuable, Mike.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Shameless plug. Brendan and I did something back in, I believe, May of 2020.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
I shared like the entire process, A to Z, everything you ever want to know, was afraid to ask. Now, Mike, it's October, mid-October. So you're probably in the middle of battle. The bullets are flying. You may not have time for that. You may want to watch that when the season's over, maybe around the holidays when you're curled up by the fire and it's snowing outside and there's not much to do. And you're like, I want to hear the sultry tones of Christopher Vassar. Maybe that's the time to listen to it. But now I'm going to give you some of my favorites that are not things that come out of the box or that are done like every coach will add their custom column, the go-tos. So a couple of things that I love are alt personnel, which is for me is a short for alternative personnel, or I do it alt PERS. I do offensive concept, which you just saw a glimpse of. And then I have some protection stuff, which we can get into. That doesn't always apply to everybody. So I kind of put that one to the side. So in today's game, well, really in the last, since the history of time, especially in high school, coaches want to get their best 11 guys in the field. In high school, and I believe Mike works at a, no, I'm sorry, Mike, you're the head coach at Kettle Moraine High School. My apologies. So you're going to have your best guys in the field. Okay. Your fourth best receiver is probably not going to be better than your tight end, or maybe he is. Maybe you don't have a tight end. I don't know. Then conversely, your third best back, maybe your receiver, and it changes year to year. So what I do when I'm studying an offense is I put in the personnel who's in the game, because before I play, what do you know? You know the down, you know the distance, you know the yard line, you know the hash, you know, and in with yard line, it's not the exact yard line, you know that too, but kind of a general, hey, are we in the middle of the field? Are we in the red zone, etc.? And then who's going to be in the game, and also the score, because that also affects and time. Okay. Those are the only things you know, which is a lot of information, but you don't know what formation they're going to come out in before you call your play, unless you're like me and you decide you're going to call your play 2 seconds before the ball snapped, which I don't advise all the time. But so you need to know who's in the game. Okay. But when you're doing your game plan, and if you're playing a team that puts the fullback at receiver and the receiver at tailback and all this crazy stuff, and you're going to put together a hit chart, or you're going to put together a plan based on, okay, these guys are in the same personnel every snap, but they get into 9,700 formations. How do I group them? So one thing I do is I use a column called alt personnel. And what I do is I have personnel who's in the game. So let's say a team is a 21 personnel team, 2 backs and a tight end, your standard I-Pro team. Okay. But they use the fullback as a second tight end. And then sometimes they'll use their tight end, who's really good. They'll flex him at receiver. And then they'll actually put their running back at receiver as well sometimes. So they get into 21 personnel empty. A lot of people do that. I see it in the pros, I see it in college, I see it in
Kyle Shanahan, right?
Yeah. Yes, the Kyle Shanahan. So how do you group those formations and create a game plan when you have all this information all strewn out? So what I do is I create the alt personnel category, which basically says, if these guys were to line up where they would be if they were in their natural position, what would that personnel grouping be? What that does is it allows me, when I create my game plan, is to group things together. So I am a firm believer, when you're tagging stuff, it is always easier to pull things apart than it is to combine. When I tag a formation, when I tag a play, I tag with the formation, who's on, who's off. Everything that you need is in that one tag, because then you can create custom columns to separate. Like, one thing that a lot of colleges are doing now is they've created a tight end location category, because the college offense now is you go 11 personnel, 1 back and a tight end, and your tight end is on the ball, he's off the ball, he's off the ball between the guard and the tackle, he's in the backfield, he's flexed out. That used to be a concept that only elite teams did, but a lot of people are doing that. So tight end location has become a new column that a lot of people use, stuff like that. So the alt personnel column helps me visualize and put all the empty formations together, put all the 4 receiver sets, even though it's the same people in the game, but it helps me build automatics by formation. I also have something called formation shell in this same vein. Okay, you're playing a team. Let's use that 11 personnel example right in this, because this is exactly when I would use this and when this is powerful. We used to play teams that would get an 11, 1 back, 1 tight end. The tight end would be on, he would be off as a wing, he'd be inside, he'd be as a fullback, he'd be flexed out. And when he's in the core, when he's on, off, in fact, I played a team or helped a team recently that played a team that had the tight end on the ball, off the ball, stacked directly behind the tackle, and then inside the tackle. And where he was going to tell you what play it was if he was 2 away from the back. Same formation. In a lot of times when you're choosing your coverages, you're going to play it the same, because whether he's on or off or he's slightly behind, the guy can still go vertical. So when you're doing your game planning, you still got to account for that guy. Because when you're looking at formations, the number one question is, can that guy go deep? Because if so, I got to make sure I have somebody to cover him. I think that's pretty much a universal game planning accepted maxim, if you will. But when you're trying to group your formations together, unless you have something that kind of puts all that together and there's a way to kind of put those formations together so you can compare them side by side to see why they're doing it, because really that's the story, is football coaches do things for a reason, right, Mike? The guy's on for a reason. He's off. He's a sniffer, or whatever you want to call him. He's inside the tackle. And most of the time, it's pretty standard why that is, but you never know. Some people change. We saw a team that stacked a guy right behind the tackle to run buck sweep. I've never seen that before. So being able to group the information together which here's the benefit of doing it this way at the end. You as a coordinator, and Mike, you're the head coach and the coordinator and the linebackers coach, you got a lot on your plate. You can type out this long formation, gun weak, pro twins, Y off, flip, meaning the second receiver's on the ball. And then you can give it to a younger assistant who doesn't have to do any really decision making. All he's got to do is say, oh, that's pro twins. And he can copy, paste, so on and so forth. And now you have a way where you take all this information and you can build a game plan by formation without pulling your hair out. And so that's why I use alt personnel and off and formation shell. The third one I mentioned, well, actually the second one I mentioned, I threw that other one in. The second one I mentioned is offensive concept. If you're playing a team that, for example, we used to play Bellarmine High School in San Jose. The great Mike Janda was the head coach. He's since retired. So I'll use him as an example because they don't do this anymore. They ran the old double tight, double wing, and they ran the toss play or power, whatever you want to call it. They had 3 different blocking combinations, or pullers rather, and they blocked the front side 6 different ways. So one play became 18 different plays. Now, Mike, when you're tagging that, you need to know who's pulling, how they're blocking the front side. Somewhere in your tags, you have to have that. However, when you're doing your tendencies, if you do just play, remember now, there's 18 different combinations, and it can go strong and it can go weak. So they have 36 different combinations off of one play. If you tag out all separately, which you have to, because you have to figure out what defense do we run, how are they pulling, blah, blah, blah. But in the tendencies, their number one play is power. But if you do it the other way, where you factor in all the pullers and everything, it's like the number one play is this. The number 2 play is sweep, and the number 3 play is ISO or whatever, because all those other ones have got splintered off. It's like a shotgun effect. It all splinters off, right? So I have a concept column that after, and again, same thing. You tag the play, and then you can have an assistant do this where they go back and you go power, OT, double, kick, whatever. And then that assistant goes through and just goes power, copy, paste. Again, a way to have things separate, because it's easier to have it separate than to go back to that same assistant on Tuesday and be like, hey, can you go through all those power plays and tag who pulls and how they block the front side? That's not good. That's not something you want to be doing on Tuesday. But if you decide, hey, I got to put this all together, it's much easier to see information that's already there. Copy, paste. So those are my 2/3 favorites. Protection, one thing we do is we started having it all in one column, but we found it was better to have number of protectors, the type of protection, and then if there was anything where like the back was going opposite, because sometimes people that are good at blocking stuff, they'll line the back up one way. If they don't shift them or have them come out of the pistol, they'll bring them across and slide toward the back lined up. We have some sort of modifying notes column for protection, and that helped us as well. Because again, if you're trying to see how much an offense protects, how many protectors there are, if you put it all in one column, it could say 7 bob, 7 slides. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, how many 7s are there? How many 6s? Separate. So those are my quick tips. There's a lot more, but as Brennan said, I don't want to take too much of your time. So check out that other video.
We'll link it at the bottom of this recap. So that'll be awesome. You'll have to just go to
I did it that fast.
I'll put in the YouTube description and put in the comments there as well. So, but yeah, I every time you've told me about all personnel, I get more and more fascinated. I think it's a great idea, and especially where I am in Massachusetts, there's still a lot of double wing teams. So and yeah, they're skinning a cat a number of different ways. So that's great. That's great advice. So this next question, I like it. I think. No offense to your Miami Hurricanes, Vass, but I think special teams can make or break you at every level, especially high school, right? So Westboro, offensive line coach at Braintree High School, Braintree, Mass, wants to know with special teams issues. Can you do it without addressing the issues without putting your starters in the whole game, or is it simply make the best play and suck it up?
I am no special teams guru. I will tell you that off the bat. However, I did work for some guys that were very good special teams guys. Dave Phipp, who was the safeties coach at San Jose State when I was there, was the special teams coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. when they won the Super Bowl. He's now with the Lions with Dan Campbell. I also worked on that staff for Dick Tomey, rest in peace, who should be, if he's not already, I haven't checked lately, should be in the College Football Hall of Fame. He put 3 programs on the map, Hawaii, Arizona, and he revived San Jose State when people wanted to drop it. I will say this, and I don't know if this is a cure, but I like the idea, instead of having a special teams coordinator, is maybe having somebody that kind of oversees it, but giving an assistant a special team. And that was Dick's big thing. And I firmly believe in that. The other way is to create ownership, to create buy-in. Simple things, and fixing special teams issue can be a broad topic. Is it you're not blocking? Is it you're not tackling? Is it you're not wedge busting? Which I still think is a thing in most states in high school football. You can still form wedges. But on a global level, I think assigning responsibility to assistants, not coordinators, but other assistants, and giving them freedom, simple things like naming the group, giving out t-shirts, letting them go eat first. Never underestimate the power of letting somebody go first in team meals. It is a great motivator. As a 8-year camper and 7 years spending as a camp counselor and director, letting people go first to eat is a powerful motivator. Find cheap, and I mean cheap, literally, monetarily, and simple, easy ways to emphasize. I think what you get out of your football program is what you get into. I know it's a cliche, but it is true. A football team should be a reflection of the assistants. Well, it should be a reflection of the head coach, and then that is taught by the assistants. And so how do you get the assistants to buy in? I was not a huge fan of doing special teams because I was a coordinator and I had a lot of things on my plate as it is. But when I helped out and I was given some freedom and being okay with having some minor failures, but you get more buy-in instead of, if you're a head coach and you're a special teams guru, yes, if you did it all yourself, it may be 100% effective, but you give a little to get a little. You give it to your assistants, you trust them as long as it's sound structurally, and you make a big deal out of recognizing those players that are not the starters, that are the backups. And the biggest thing, if you want me to get sports psychology on you, is role acceptance, role clarity, defining a role for the player, getting them to buy in, accept it, to buy in, and then praising the hell out of them in public. If your head coach is asked why you won this big game, you don't talk about the star quarterback. You don't talk about the DN that's going to Michigan or whatever. You talk about that wedge buster. You talk about those kids. So those are some easy things that I think anybody can do regardless of your talent. Now, when it comes to actually fixing how to block better, that's a whole different ballgame. But find guys that want to do it, celebrate the hell out of them, make it a big deal.
Well said. Well said. And now here's one I'm going to throw at you here. This is the dilemma for, I think, a lot of teams this time of year. So those playoff seedings come out. You get the matchup. You have 3, maybe 4 days to prepare for an opponent you probably don't know a heck of a lot about in a lot of cases, right? What's the first step? What do you do?
So, living in California and coaching for a decade, we had a bowl system, which meant you didn't find out who you played until Sunday afternoon. And it could be one of 15 teams. So when I was at Sarah High School in 2016, this is the one that stands out the most. Quick story, and then I'll get into the answer. Our head coach scheduled our banquet the Sunday we were supposed to find out who we were going to play in the regional game. Now, the likelihood of making it to a regional game is very slim, but we pulled it out. And so I was basically, it was like the white smoke when electing the Pope. I was on the side of the banquet. I was the side of the auditorium, rather. And as we went through the banquet and we did the awards and everything, I stood on the side because he didn't want the players being distracted and families being distracted. And I literally was swiping every 5 seconds. And I was instructed to raise my hand up when the news came across. And he was in the middle of giving some impassioned speech. And he said, no matter when, raise your hand, even if I'm in the middle of giving the best speech of all time. Well, he was giving a great speech, and I threw my hand up. Room goes crazy. I walk up. I tell the kids and the coaches who we're going to face. And Coach Walsh, who was the greatest, literally said, we got work to do. We'll finish this banquet in February. And we walked out and we went into scramble mode. We found out Sunday at noon we had to play Friday at 7:30 on the road in a very hostile environment. And then this ended up happening the next year when we went to a state game. We had the Friday 4:00 game when we found out Sunday at noon who we had. And it could have literally been any team. So trying to figure it out and doing it was impossible. So the first thing we did is we figured out who's the guy that's going to get the ball. In the example I used, we had to stop a kid named Jalen Cropper, who's now basically he forgoed whatever the past tense of forego would be, offers from UCLA and Oregon, and he decided to stay at Fresno State and be the guy. The next year, we had to defend Jaden Daniels as the quarterback from Arizona State, throwing to a kid who was 6'8" and had 2,000 yards receiving. The first thing is quickly identify who you got to stop and then filter out the noise. We basically said, if we had a week or 2 weeks, if we had a bye and we knew, we could look at everything. And we looked at everything as the week went on, but we had to be ready for Monday practice with a half a day to prepare. So the first thing was to eliminate the noise. If they'd only done something in one game, unless the rule was if they'd only done it one game, we were throwing it out until Monday night to look at it. Or if they did it a ton versus a team that was very similar to us. Those were the two caveats. So we took all that other stuff and we put it to the side. Then we went back. We got through just top 5 formations. What are they going to do? What are their top 5 runs, top 5 passes? Everything was top 5. The problem was they'd played, Sanger at that time had played 13 games. I ended up in the hospital, so I missed Monday. We had to play on Friday. It was insane. So you want to talk about really being behind the 8 ball. Not only do we have 5 days, I spent Monday in the ER from 9 a.m. till I think it was released at 7 p.m. That's a whole nother.
That is no good.
That is not great. So I even had less time. And they were a wing T team that ran hybrid wing T that ran like 57 formations. And it was going to be the guy's potentially his last game. He was a legend in town, 30 years. They had the first perfect team. It was a nightmare. But how we kept our heads was we took the things, no one hit wonders, no one game wonders. We drilled down to the core. We found the concepts that were the most different, practiced those, and then found pieces where we could be like, okay, this is like this is like that, knowing it was not going to be perfect. But kept in mind, and here's the other thing you have to keep in mind, 99.9% of the time when you're in this situation, and I had to keep repeating this to myself, or else I would have spent 3 days in the hospital. No, I'm kidding. Was they're going through the same thing too. They were going through the exact same thing we were going through. So guys, when you get your opponents, when you get this stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, we have 5 days to do this, just remember, take a deep breath. They're going through the same thing. Find out what's important. I know it sounds easy. I know it sounds like, yeah, no crap, Coach Vass, of course. But keep telling yourself that. Is this important? Yes or no? Because when you're in those situations, and NFL teams do it all the time, and they'll play teams that are out of their league too. Like, the Jets played the Falcons or whatever, had to go play in England, so there's less time because you're traveling and then there's commitments. I mean, even the pros go through it. Teams they'll never see again. And so, just keep that in mind, though. They're going through the same thing. Find the important stuff and keep your head up. Now, what is important? We looked for anything that we wanted to find their base. What did they keep going back to every game? Because sometimes you feature stuff in one game that you don't feature versus another, especially if you're a team like that, that's a system-based team that has blocking rules for odd and even fronts. So, of course, versus even fronts, they were going to feature different teams than they were versus odd fronts. We were an even team. So we kind of also de-emphasized the odd front stuff, even if it was the game before, because that's the other thing. The worst thing that can happen as a game planner is the last game they just played was against a team that is completely different than you, because it's psychological. Like, okay, this is the last piece of data we have from them, but it is completely different opponent. But try to filter out the noise. and then find the common thread. And it's like the prospectors put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Like, I think of the gold miners.
I think you think of the Will Ferrell character from Saturday Night Live, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're shaking out the thing.
Prospect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Thank you. Great poll.
Gus
You're
Chiggins.
and you're just trying to figure out what's left in there. And that is also a feel as well. Some of it's your gut, some of it's experience, where like, what do you think? And also always remember this. If you were playing you, what would you do? Keep asking yourself that. Don't panic. And what would you do if you were the guy facing you or gal facing you?
Well, we thank you again for watching. And reminder to if you haven't already, to opt in a little beta. All you got to do is on that navigation, just hit beta and boom, you're ready to go. But for now, for Coach Vass and Hall signing off. Vass, anything else you want to add before we close off here?
Good luck.
Good luck to everybody. Happy football as always. Have a good one.